Hello and welcome back to the next part of my series of videos about how to set up your QNAP QTS5 NAS right the very first time. In today's video we're going to focus on photography. That is, whether you're a professional photographer or someone that's just collected decades of albums all on USB sticks and more, and you want to get them all onto the NAS. And today I'm going to talk you through and walk you through two of the main photography applications on the QNAP QTS5 platform. I'm also going to show you how to set up a DLNA media server on the NAS so you can view your photography on other devices in your home or office environment. I'm going to talk you through a lot of how to set up the NAS on indexing so we can search the NAS appropriately and find the right directories of photos so you can see the photos that you want to and not see the ones that you don't. And also, I'm going to talk you through the key ways in which you can migrate your data over as well as access it. So the first thing you're going to need to do is head into the App Center, and then from there, on the left-hand side, click the QNAP Store, then click Entertainment, and then in here will be a pile of applications. Now, I am also going to be covering video playback tools and audio playback tools. So there's lots to look at here. However, the ones you need to install for today's video are PhotoStation, QuMagie, which will also install a QuMagie AI application. You will need to install the media streaming add-on application and a great tool known as Multimedia Console, which by default should be installed on your QNAP NAS in QTS5. But if it's not, go into QTS Essentials and it'll appear right here. Those are the photo tools we're going to look at. It doesn't really matter what order you install them in, but I recommend that all four of those applications are installed by default. Once you've got those four tools installed, you've got pretty much everything you're going to need to enjoy, share, stream, and create portfolios of your photos. The next thing you need to do is head into the control panel. In the control panel, head to the left-hand side to the bottom option marked Applications. In Applications, there will be an option here at the top marked DLNA Media Server. This is how to create a simple to access server that devices in your home or office environment, such as home consoles, laptops, Fire Stick TV, media boxes and more, can talk to the NAS in a basic way and access light media. Tick the box next to the DLNA Media Server option, give it a name, use the default account, because different accounts on your NAS, as you've seen in part 1 and 2 of this series, will have their own protocols, and then from there you can go ahead and click Advanced Settings, which will open a new window on your browser. This is where you can set up your DLNA Media Server with the media streaming add-on to the best possible way. Give the media server a name, select if you want it to use the default or any network port if you choose, but if you have multiple network ports on your NAS, it never hurts to select one that you might want to prioritize as the media server and therefore not give up any bandwidth that may be used on backups or more. Once these options are set up, and again the majority of these can be set to default, there's a few other options for us to look at. And again, if you are using a Chromecast or any kind of Google streaming device, it may be worth ticking this box in order to make sure that you don't get a compressed version of your video files and just enjoy the original full quality. Just remember that files like 4K and more are quite heavy on the network. Then select Browser Settings, and this will decide how things will be displayed. If you want large thumbnails to be streamed to connected DLNA media server devices, click it there, as well as how you want information displayed on screen. Finally, on media streamer devices, this will list media streaming devices such as consoles, phones and more on the local area network, and you can decide which devices can or cannot see the media network on the fly and therefore have access to the media server. Once that's all done, it should save, or you can go to the bottom and click Apply All. Once that's done, your media server is ready to go. And if you do search the local area network utilizing again a DLNA or uPnP equipped device, you will find this NAS on the network as a media server. All you need to do if you're a PC user, for example, is go to Access Media, select Connect to a Media Server. It will scan the local area network and the NAS will appear. As you see there, 2 QNAPs right there. Just double click and it will add that media server to your list of available mapped network drives and media servers, just like you've seen here before. But of course, sharing over DLNA is a little bit more limited as a means of accessing the photography on your NAS. It doesn't have the control, the ability to create customized albums, and ultimately it's not quite as customizable and unique to most users who want to have a far more detailed graphical user interface. Before we get into PhotoStation and QuMagie, it's worth talking about Multimedia Console, that second tool I recommended that you guys install that may or may not already be installed. Multimedia Console is a single system management tool for all of your media, not just photos. And although I will mention Multimedia Console and the DLNA media server in my videos about video and audio, I'm going to go into more detail in this video than those. In Multimedia Console, it gives you the ability to tell the NAS what directories each service should use. So in the case of QuMagie, for example, once you've selected the application you've installed, click down here and click Edit and tell it which folders on the NAS it's allowed to browse for information. Once it's done that, click Apply, and there you go. It now has a direct list of which folders on the NAS it should search for photos. Repeat the same steps for PhotoStation. Also bear in mind, if there are directories that you don't want the NAS to go through because they are system files or they contain work that you don't really want to share on your DLNA on your photo applications with friends, family and more, click Exclude System Sources and it will detail what's excluded. And you can add more of these in the previous menu there in the settings, allowing you to change what you search and what you don't. Again, you can assign this to every one of these services, including the DLNA media server, and that will control which collections of media are searched. And again, with photography, given the huge weight of information we're dealing with, it's sensible to use this. Periodically, the system will index internally, which is when the system checks all of the files and information on the system and keeps a record of all of its metadata. This will be done semi-automatically, but if ever you're worried that it's not indexed correctly and got all of your photos up to scratch and correct, you can always re-index by clicking here. Thumbnail generation, if you are a photo enthusiast, is very, very important. Thumbnail generation, when it comes to dealing with photos on a NAS, can slow down your network bandwidth. Do make sure that the system makes a point of creating its own thumbnails in advance, which it can then use when displaying photos later on much more quickly, as it shows you a small thumbnail now and then you flick over to a larger photo. It just makes a lot more sense doing it using this tool rather than on the fly, which can then slow down your system. There's lots of options here to have it done at certain times of day, how high or low quality you want your thumbnails to be, and more. And all of them can be configured and be fantastically unique. Transcoding largely applies to video services, something we'll touch on in another video. And that's really it for Multimedia Console. The last thing I'd add is if you're going to utilize the AI supported services such as utilizing QuMagie or QuMagie Core or installing a Coral M2 PTU inside your NAS, if you have an available M2 slot, you can configure it here and see how much of it's being utilized by the system. So now you know that you can create the DLNA media server and that you can utilize Multimedia Console to completely tailor the contents of your NAS. Let's go into the two photo applications. First up, we'll look at PhotoStation. PhotoStation 6 is a far more kind of photographer friendly tool, although it can be a little bit complex for some users. As you see here, we have the gallery mode that has all of the photos displayed there on screen on their images. Don't worry too much about the drop in frame rate there. That's largely down to utilizing OBS for this recording. Now, from this user interface here, you can garner a lot of information, depending on what took the photo and how. Let's take a picture of what is, quite frankly, an incredibly unhealthy meal. If we look at this photo here, we can see that the resolution's pretty high there. It's still not the original full quality image because that's what we set up earlier in the Multimedia Console. Had we gone to the Multimedia Console and from there we had decided to display images in highest quality first, the result would be that these images would be of a much higher quality here in the web browser. Just bear in mind that if we create those higher resolution images, then it can slow down your network performance. From here, we've got several options open. We can find out information about the photo, and if the image was taken with a particularly complex camera, information that's linked in the metadata of that image will be connected and available. We can also use this metadata information later in live filters and album creation, something I'll show you. On top of that, we can create a slideshow that utilizes all the images that are available to see, and we can add music to it if we choose. We can then go ahead and share this photo with others if we choose. All we need to do is click the share logo there, and we can choose one of many supported platforms or just go straight into a link. From here, you can then say whether you want this link to be internet based or URL based, but you will need to arrange and activate the Quick Connect and My QNAP cloud services. Just bear in mind that we're not covering that in today's video. Then you can decide whether it's localized or not. Choose whether you want to use a secure encryption. Then, if you want to have a password to bar people accessing it who you don't want to, and even say how long you want the link to last. When it's done, click Create. There you've got your URL. If you want, you can go ahead, open that up in a brand new tab, and this is what a shared user would see. They'll see whatever photo you've sent them, and they can't access the background metadata, which can be quite handy if you don't want them to know too much about your photos. Coming out of this photo station image here, we can take a little look at the rest of the layout, because even though we have this gallery mode, you may want to go for something a bit more precise. If you do, click Manage. In the Manage tab, we have a far more familiar breadcrumb style here that photography professionals may well be more at home with. We can change between a timeline view or a timeline mode or not, and within that timeline mode, we can also group them into years, such as December 2019, or flick between them, and it will display those images immediately. Now again, we can select one of these images now, head in, and then from there, look at that picture of that moron, that is me. From there, we can again find out lots of information there on the right, just like we could before, but there's a few extra options, such as enabling whether we want to use person recognition mode. This is something I'm going to talk about later on with QuMagie, but luckily you can combine these services together across multiple platforms. And again, all of this is here, as well as whether you want to stream to any supported network players that you can push this photo to automatically. If we come out of this photo here, on the left hand side of the screen, we can also look into album creation as well as the user interface itself and what we can do with it. So, for example, we can flick to a folder view, which then allows us to access the folder that we gave Multimedia Console permission to source all of our albums. On top of that, we can go straight into album mode here, or even create our own album, something I'll do shortly. The People tab takes advantage of connections with QuMagie for photo recognition, so you can name people and group people together a lot more easily and recognize and search for them in a way that you couldn't previously. And I will go into more detail on that in just a moment. And the Share Center will detail any images that you've shared so you can quickly edit the protocol or cease sharing them as you see fit. Now, when we go back to the album creation here, one cool thing we can do if we head back into the main list of options here, when we go into the photos in the shared photo area, we can, if we choose, if we go for a larger album such as December 401, we can then filter these quite simply. If we go to Content Filter, it will go between photos and video if we choose. But what if we want to go into a lot more detail than that? A lot of the filter options that are built into PhotoStation lack a lot of the smart filtration options that a number of people are used to these days, particularly those that are moving away from cloud services. So in order to get a better handle on what we're doing with our photography, we need to move over to QuMagie. Now QuMagie again will be available on your apps here on the desktop, but there's also an application much like PhotoStation for iOS, Android and more. It's easy to find and most of the control configuration options are the same, although it's worth highlighting that a lot of the background control and settings are more available and to a larger customizable degree here on the web browser than they are on the mobile clients. If we head into QuMagie, this utilizes AI photo recognition and does a much better job of classification and combining photos for searches or smart albums than PhotoStation. As you can see here on screen, we have lots of photos, and if we go into a photo just like we did before, not only do we have the information as we've seen previously, but we have a lot more of it. And this information is going to come very useful very soon. And of course, we can share photos with all the same settings that we saw previously. All of it lovely and straightforward. Now, once we're looking at all of these and we're looking at all the different files and photos and sharing that information, what if we want to take advantage of a filter? Say, for example, now we know a lot about this information in these photos and we want to search for a specific photo from this collection. Head up here to this funnel icon. From here, you can either start selecting whether you want photos or video, whether you want to search for specifics such as people that we've tagged, something I'll show you in a moment, or timeline, but that still seems not precise enough. Click the tag up here and it will allow you to add a whole bunch of new variables, such as areas that the AI recognition has scanned using geodata, as well as camera information as well. And now you'll see that a lot more information has been presented, thanks to not only the information it's garnered from the metadata of those photos, but also from AI photo recognition in the Things or People tab. So for example, say we wanted to see photos of Clara and Morgan. It now only finds photos that have Clara and Morgan on screen. Now, at the moment, none of those photos that we had so far had the right metadata for us to utilize it, but if they did, they would have been displayed here. For example, if we remove Clara, we can see that there are photos of Morgan that contain food that have taken place in the south coast of England on 2 different devices. So say we only want to see the photos taken on the Google phone. That's these 4. And we know it contains food, but nonetheless, we can click it if we choose. And then we funnel it, and then they're gone because what have we got? We have got drink, not food. But let's say these photos of Morgan taken on this phone. We can now choose and decide that we want to create a smart album with just these photos. We click here, and now we can create a brand new album, and we can just call this one Morgan and Google. Again, we can do configuration and permissions and settings of who can access it. Click create, and now in the albums tab there'll be a brand new album down here using those parameters. So for those of you that are searching through extensive collections of photos, this can help narrow things down quite a lot. Now, as mentioned, say for example you didn't want photos of people or on certain devices, but what you actually wanted was things or places, we can go ahead and say, what if we only want pictures of beer? Then beer is not sublisted on this category. But those categories do exist. Let me show you. On the left hand side of the screen, now we've finished with photos, what we want to do is go into albums. And this is where a lot of the more intelligent back-end stuff becomes apparent. If we click on the people tag, we can see that the AI photo recognition has seen all of these people while scanning these photos. I've already named a few people here, but there are more to go. So let's take, for example, this photo here. This is Sarah. What we'll do is click there and name her Sarah. Click OK, and there you go. Sarah is now added to the lineup of people. But what if we find another picture of Sarah or someone else? If we want to add this photo of Clara, we simply go over here, select the three dots, select her, go back, click who is this, then from there we can either start typing her name or just select her name from the list, and then it merges them together with the existing album, and there she is there in that photo. If, for example, we tagged someone and it's a mistake and we want to remove a tag, go into the information on the right, click this icon here, and then you can remove people at the touch of a button. Come out, and as you'll see, it's now removed that option and represented that person here in the list, as straightforward as that. And again, this information is shared between both QuMagie and within PhotoStation. That is how PhotoStation was able to have the People's tab here, which periodically will be updated and sequenced in line with this one, with it being shared between them. Now, more than photos of people as we go through our collection, because bear in mind, not only will it scan your entire collection of photos on the NAS, but as you upload more photos, they in turn will be scanned against the profiles you've created as well. On top of that, the AI also recognizes things. It looks at the photos, sees what's inside, and has AI support to recognize things such as waffles, such as pizza. All of these, again, are photos where if you look at the name of the photo, such as this, it wasn't called pizza, but it knew it was pizza. And it even managed to scrape the location of where it was taken, a restaurant which did amazing pizza. Shocking. Again, if we choose, we can go ahead if we want and get all of these photos to be selected, if we choose, into one giant album and just call the album Pizza. As straightforward as that. And again, all of this allowing us to create customized albums where we search our collections or a massive archive of photos, which if we've got decades of photos to go through and we want to catalog them in some way, this allows us to create those albums lovely and quickly for us to have all of our information long term. Likewise, next to things, we've also got places which will then recognize the geolocational data built into these photos if they're taken on a phone that has GPS, and then it can track that and group these all together. Again, we could create, if we choose to, an album just of these photos and call it West South Coast, lovely and easily, and it's very easy to do it. Some media types, depending on the device you upload, may be burst, time-lapse, slow-mo or live photos, such as found on the iPhone platform. Consequently, they will be recognized in these folders. It's that straightforward. We can even browse folders in our traditional breadcrumb fashion here in the background, and it will still scrape a lot of the information of the photos from earlier into that album. Again, if you're utilizing the mobile application, it will be synchronized with this folder here. So if you install QuMagie on your iPhone or Android device, you can pair and synchronize that app with the QNAP, and the photos you upload will be available in this folder here. You can then cross them against the other areas of QuMagie, and then from there create your own filtered albums and intelligently created albums here on this screen. There's a huge amount of potential for what you can do, and a number of different ways in which you can not only enjoy your photography, but share it with those that you care about. Now, it is worth remembering that if you are currently on a cloud platform, such as Apple Photos, Google Photos, or more, moving those photos over can be difficult. Very few cloud platforms provide the API or research and develop tools to simply migrate them over easily. Take Google Photos, for example. Google Photos does not allow you to connect remotely with your Google Photos account on Google. What you need to do is use a service known as Google Takeaway. Now, Google Takeaway, available here, requires you to log into your account, and it lists a huge list of data of all of the services that you use on Google and the data it's collected. Scroll down, find Google Photos. Then from there, you can download both the Google Photos collection and the Google Drive collection. Once they're done, you can then download that data, which may take a long amount of time depending on how much data you've got. Then you can upload that data to the NAS. Do bear in mind that when you're downloading this data, a lot of photography data will include a certain kind of file known as a JSON file. JSON files are how Google keep that metadata, such as the location of the photo, the aperture of the camera, and more. This information you're going to have to use with a third-party tool to re-merge with your photos. It's not the quickest job, but it's necessary if you want to be able to keep all of that metadata you've had previously rather than build it all again from scratch. Again, this guide should be linked in the description below, and if it's not, simply look for this idea here on Google and it should be the first result. Otherwise, here's the link at the top of the screen, and I've done a full video tutorial on how to do this here on the channel, and I recommend you check that out. It's a comprehensive guide that will guide you through how to move your photos from both Google Drive and Photos gradually with Google Takeout onto your NAS. But this has been how to enjoy photography on your QNAP NAS with QTS5. We will be looking at music, audio and more, as well as how to enjoy video on your NAS as well. So stay tuned for that. If you've enjoyed this, click like as it helps me understand what I'm doing right, and click the bell and the subscribe button to be notified as more parts in this series arrive. And otherwise, you can always take advantage of the free advice section over on NAS Compares, linked in the description. It's completely free, it's manned by two humans, me and Eddie the web guy. We answer every email, we don't do anything with your emails. Just give us an extra day or so to reply, as it can get quite busy. There are donate buttons, use them, ignore them, it's up to you. I will see you next time.